Okay. Hi, everybody. It's Lori and Lawrence and Flat Earth Conspiracy Channel once again. And we have a guest with us, Charlie, from, gosh darn it, now I already forgot the channel.
It's Unsealed Truth Project.
Unsealed Truth Project. Okay. My bad. I was so worried about Lawrence's glitchy new computer that I forgot where I was started. Okay. So
No
welcome,
worries.
Charlie. And welcome, Lawrence. Lawrence has a new laptop, so we had a little problem getting started. So now we're here. And we have invited Charlie to do a hangout with us because of several reasons, one of which, since I don't believe in coincidences, I was scanning around looking at some videos and saw Charlie's channel over on the right-hand side of the screen with a new video. So I clicked on it, and Charlie has done a massive amount of research and put together a nice video. What's the title of the video, Charlie?
It's called the Abrahamic Conspiracy.
The Abrahamic Conspiracy. Okay. For those of you who pronounce it the other way, Abrahamic. Okay, so I started watching the video, and it occurred to me that Charlie would be somebody good to talk with, because a few things that I've been noticing lately in the truth movement in general, on Facebook and in the Flat Earth community, is a growing problem, I believe, with religion arguments, religion bashing, people suddenly talking boldly about other people and other people's religions and beliefs and spiritual beliefs when we're right at the sort of the height of the current truth movement. Most truth starts out, I believe, as grassroots. I believe the grassroots movement shows a trend to the powers that be and those who like to control the narrative of everything. Once they see a grassroots movement begin and start to grow, and even sometimes prior to that, they send in the gatekeepers and the disinformation agents and start their gaslighting and all their little tricks that they use to disrupt and cause friction in between those who are trying to have a dialogue about a new truth idea. And so when Lawrence and I got started in the Flat Earth movement, when that really actually got started about 2 years ago now, Lawrence was already looking into it prior to that. I came in on the first wave when it started to really grab hold of Facebook and YouTube. And both of us noticed pretty quickly that there were some YouTube gurus and bloggers rising to the top very quickly and not naming themselves as leaders, but becoming leaders by virtue of the fact that they were putting out a massive amount of videos and starting Facebook pages and groups and just doing the classic, oh, this is new, I'm going to get in on the ground floor. And so once that started to happen, that is usually right about the time that government agencies and secret groups and the controllers of information also send in their people and start to sway the dialogue and the narrative in a direction they want it to go. Lawrence and I both discovered pretty quickly that there was a map and model that was being touted as the Flat Earth map and the Flat Earth model, put out by several of the so-called leaders or gurus or top YouTube makers. You can just put an equal sign in between all of those. And we disagreed with it. And we set about a mission of discovery to find out why this dogma was taking hold and why it was being believed and promoted and repeated without due research and investigation, due diligence, research and investigation. And so that's sort of where we took our niche, and that's where we've remained ever since, basically on the fringe. Now, fortunately, because we did that, others also started to question, and now there's a growing number of people who agree with us that map and model are incorrect and should not be promoted as the flat Earth map and model. There are still quite a few, the majority, who continue to use that map and model and promote it endlessly in their posts on Facebook and their videos that they make on YouTube, and argue with those who say, no, that is not how it works. Vehemently, they argue the same way pretty much now as they argued with Globers when they first got involved in flat Earth. Interesting enough, I found a trend because I have a Facebook group called Flat Earth Conspiracy Advanced on Facebook, that religion constantly came into play in discussions and therefore arguments about why people believe certain aspects of flat Earth. And those who come at it from a biblical perspective use the Bible and scripture to back up what they think God was trying to relay about how he created the earth and how it is. And I found that interesting because most of them believed that same scripture and those same words meant globe all through the whole time they read it before. And so suddenly when they change their worldview and start to see that the earth is flat, they convert that same scripture to say, no, it's always said it's flat. I just didn't see it that way before. So I have a hard time having that conversation with people because it becomes very angry or name calling, or people get their feelings hurt. And so I've tried very hard to stay away from that. But now this new trend I'm seeing coming along where religion bashing, anti-religion, is becoming another new trend. And I think there's a reason for that. And that is because it is coming from a sort of an underground, or maybe even a psyop, led by those same people who divide every other truth group. And so I invited Charlie to come on and talk with us because he's done the research on where religions came from, how they were created, evolved, and he has a background both in being of a religion, probably all the way, I think you said, to being an atheist, and then into this research. I also want to say that Charlie is not necessarily a flat earther, although he is aware of the flat earth conspiracy, and he has heard about it. You'd have to have been living under a rock not to have heard about it by now. So that's basically my introduction before we get going, so that as we have this conversation, people don't ask themselves, well, what has this got to do with flat earth? Because I think religion has everything to do with flat earth because it's become, integrated into flat earth. I also want to say that there's every religion in flat Earth, from Christianity to atheism, from Hinduism to Islam, Muslim. Flat Earth is in every country. Flat Earth is in all 50 states of America. And so religion is something we all know about. And then I want to end that with, when I was growing up and when I was younger, the older generation sort of had an unwritten rule that when you were in public or in social situations, you did not talk about several of these topics. One was obviously religion, the other was politics, and the other was race. And so now suddenly, because people have gone from those social graces to the almost total opposite of no holds barred, through the brain and out the mouth, nobody worries about hurting anybody's feelings anymore, so on and so on. So to start off, I want Charlie, if you will, to explain what got you started in your research and where it took you. And you can just sort of brush over that, or you can get in depth a little bit, and I'll shut up.
Okay, good deal. So I was pretty much raised Southern Baptist, and from there I went to denominational, a Christian school growing up. So I was pretty heavily indoctrinated in this kind of stuff. And I like to make clear is that I definitely do not want to, pull people from their faith or take an anti-religious approach. More so, wake up people to facts, because it causes a lot of unnecessary division. Their own, within religious organizations and secular organizations. Essentially, I realized that there was a lot of deception going on. Sure, a lot of Protestant Christians would even agree, the birth date of Jesus, the white depiction of Jesus, stuff like this started coming to the surface in some research when I was when I did consider myself Christian. So I would reason with myself, and I would say, I'm essentially looking into the occult, and that's how I'm deriving this knowledge. It's not necessarily given to me by taught, to follow the Holy Spirit and to follow this certain dogma. And I found truth elsewhere. So it kind of allowed me to dig in a little deeper. And the thing is, and like you said, Lori, that on YouTube are pretty crazy. There's a controlled opposition everywhere you look. Applicable information in a lot of areas, which is why I'm completely down for coming on here and helping, with the flat Earth community information out. It's basically, one has this, it's more of a reality filter than anything. Problem with anyone submitting to the fact that, of any religion really, or any religion, but the dogma part is what we should really look into and use some critical thinking, because a lot of religious institutions are just there to specifically shut off your critical thinking. And the thing is, it's provable that the Bible is a fallible book, that it has interpolations in it by scribes, that before Jesus even or I know there's a movement that says that there was no historical Jesus, which I haven't got into yet, but I personally believe that there was a man the character or the archetype was based off of. But before this character was introduced, the Bible was changed. It was changed from a polytheistic religion to a monotheistic religion. The thing with that is it's really beneficial for even the believers to understand this, because it becomes more so than a brainwash program. But that's basically where I stand on that. I went I ever necessarily became atheistic. I do definitely believe in a higher power. I believe that a lot more to it, and I'll leave it at that for now. But I did kind of experience both extremes of the situation. I like this, but when I kind of woke up to what was going on, I kind of had an anger, a little anti-religious toward the beginning, and that in itself was a psychological operation, because I followed a lot of people in the atheistic community, or evangelical atheistic community, who would, dedicate their lives to pretty much bashing Christianity stuff. And I realized how hostile that was, and how I wanted no part in that. But people really need to start waking up to the fact that it's here to brainwash you. The whole idea, Christianity and its controlled opposition form of Satanism, grow up in practicing Satanism, or even Anton LaVey Satanism, or anything of that nature, you'll get into some stuff that'll kind of freak you out, make you run to Christianity. Or like growing up in Christianity, there's a lot of deception that'll make you really pissed off and kind of want to go, Satanism route, or the anti-religious route, or whatever. Keep us from seeing the gray area. There's always one extreme. And that's basically what I want to emphasize to the viewers that are watching my channel.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple of things and clear up a couple of terms, I guess.
Okay.
One is, most people who have never really done any investigation into, hold on, I've got something running in the background. By the way, your video's lagging a little bit along with your audio. So if you have anything else open or using bandwidth, I know you're using a phone right now, shut it down, and that will help the audio be better. Okay. So a couple of things occurred to me while you were talking. One is, I've found that when the word occult is used, people automatically relate that to Satanism. And that is obviously, once you start to research, occult simply means hidden or secret. And it has nothing to do with Satanism. Although there's also a gray area there. So the other is, when someone, as someone starts to look into spirituality, which is what religions are based on, and what people need to understand is the chicken or the egg theory. Okay. The chicken is, let's say the chicken is your spirituality and the egg is your religion that you embrace or check into or start to practice. Okay. Religion is a belief system, and your spirituality is grows throughout your lifetime. And many people, while they're going through their, growth and experience period, waver all over the place and check out other religions. I remember back in the hippie days, people checked into Hinduism, and they checked into the different occult religions, and just to kind of find a balance. You can read everything from the Bible to the Quran and everything in between, and kind of decide for yourself what resonates with you. But sometimes what happens is you get involved in researching a religion, and if you happen upon a very charismatic leader, of that particular religion who can really grab your spirit and create sort of almost a mystery school around it, and that charismatic leader sucks you in and you literally follow them. That is when you start in going off into the cultish version of any religion. And so it's important to separate spirituality from religion. You have anything on that?
You pretty much nailed that. I agree with you. I agree with you 100% on that.
Okay. Good. Finally, somebody just agrees with that.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can.
Okay. So what I want to touch on is also, and I want Lawrence to chime in on this because he and I had this conversation just briefly, but we both noticed the same thing. And when Lawrence and I click like that, which is the thing that brought us together in the first place, that means something because we're both very intuitive and we're both pretty good at just really taking in all these little nuances and seeing the trend. So why would you think, after all these thousands of years of created religions and expanding religions to the point where pretty much everybody on earth is like one of five. I know there's hundreds of religions, okay? But basically everyone of the masses falls into one of five categories. And that includes atheism or agnosticism, which is a belief in nothing, no God and no religion. And why do you think now, after thousands of years, there's this push for, I don't want to call it anti-religion. I guess I really want to call it religion bashing and religion investigation. Why do you think now?
I would say it has to do with a lot of controlled opposition because a lot of people are waking up. I mean, there's to be found in texts like the Bible, the Quran, the Hindu holy text, Bhagavad Gita, I believe it's called. But there's so much truth to be found in it, but it's laced with a lot of deception and dogma. So it's kind of to the point where people are waking up to it, and you have controlled opposition cashing in and pretty much copywriting that people against religion, and it gives a lot more validity to the religion than what you would like to think, because as soon as you see a big trend, I mean, if Christians looking to see a huge trend of atheism coming and stuff, well, it's the end times. We gotta lock down. This is all the prophecies are coming true. It is a big attack on religion, but it's to get a reaction, in my opinion.
Well, sure, because anytime you get attacked, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to defend. I mean, especially when you have invested years of your life in reading biblical text or any other religion's text, and you've spent your whole life going to church every Sunday, going to Sunday school, religious holidays, and so on and so on. What's interesting, though, to me, is that as many times I'm going through my Facebook feed, for example, which I use to gauge the temperature of, what is working with regards to the news and the media and events such as, what's that big football, the playoff, what's that called? The big football thing at the end of the football. God, you can tell I don't do football. or the the Emmys or the Grammys or the Oscars or any big event that's being hyped by the controllers is controlling the dialogue, the narrative of the people that are tuned in to that. Okay. When you're not tuned into that, you don't see it. And you mock and you laugh and you go, yeah, big deal, red carpet and dresses and movies. And so with this particular timing, I'm sure you're aware of the New World Order idea that they've had going on for decades. No one had probably on earth has missed the George Bush Sr. speech about we're going to bring you a new world order. And so one of the aspects of the New World Order is a one world government and a one world religion and a one world economy. Those are three aspects. And so in order to get those three things to happen as simultaneously as possible, they've got to work it. They've got to create the environment for their ploy to work. Well, they've been working pretty hard at a global economy, okay, for years. And now it's gotten to the point where we have global corporations and global military, UN and global a whole lot of stuff, okay? And they're not that far off from global government because all they would, have to do is pretty much crush the few top countries, especially the top economic and military countries, USA being one of the most important ones. And for a one world religion to happen, what do you got to do? You got to destroy all of the, primary religions, and then the secondary religions, and then the tertiary religions. And then before you know it, you've got chaos. And because if people have no belief system, they're going to cling to whatever everybody else is clinging to. So I find that this timing is pretty epic in that for them to accomplish this one world, new world order goal, religion plays an integral part in it. Lawrence, you've been so quiet and so muted.
Yeah.
Can you jump in on this? What's been said so far, and your take on what you see happening.
Well, from the flat Earth perspective, it seems that those that make the most noise, the so-called big channels, none of them are really traditional religious people in terms of their beliefs. Well, one or two of them maybe. They also they'll go for a creator, but they won't go for God. It's usually they're leaving the option open that it's some kind of other intelligent life, and they've been making a play out to mock religion. It happened about a year ago with one particular channel, and in the last week there's been another channel that's come out. I think it's I can't remember the exact name of the channel. It's one that favors the infinite plane, and they've put out about 40. This guy's put out about 40 videos in the space of 2 or 3 days. There's very little flat earth content. It's mostly religion bashing and saying this has all been set up. The good versus the evil, just playing one off against the other. Why that is, maybe maybe they're tying in the two together, so they're going to be bringing, you know, this guy was saying the globe is the religion, and the dome will be the new religion. And yeah, I mean, getting rid of all the religions is obviously the aim of the New World Order, to have a one world religion, whatever that is. And maybe this one world religion is ultimately one associated with something new that we haven't had introduced yet. What that is, I don't know. But there's certainly, you know, a lot of people out there who certainly won't nail their colours to God. It's down to something else, but they won't say what that is. So yeah.
Well, some people, their religion is based on, you know, aliens from another planet, gods from another world, the fallen angels as gods. And so a lot of people consider that to be New Age, I guess, or, you know, another religion. And even the religion of scientism is considered now a religion. So the idea of the timing, I can't think of another reason. I mean, there's always been Christian bashing, and there's always been Jew bashing, and there's always been, you know, suddenly, you know, every Muslim is a Muslim extremist, especially if you live in the United States and European countries. And so each one of these religions, the Abrahamic religions, are, Lawrence, you're making noise as always. So once this sort of bashing starts to happen, what is the consequence of that? Okay. And it, you know, I pretty much live my life as, I don't really care what you believe, as long as you don't try to inflict it on me, or you don't try to rule over me. Those two things, that's all. Okay. Allow me the same courtesy in return. Treat others as you would be treated. And so if you want to have a discussion about what you believe and what I believe, and you can do that with an open mind and some ability to abstractly think to where you understand with some degree of empathy what I believe, and if our lives are long enough to go through the experiences that each of us have been through with another person, to describe why you believe what you believe. If you're somebody who has watched someone miraculously be healed, you can pretty much be sure that that person is going to believe in an all-powerful God. If you've watched your child be slaughtered in a car accident or something, then what is the first thing people do? You know, they cry out in anger against God. Why would you take my child? And that may very well be the same person. So this is why spiritual beliefs, and when I say spirit, I mean your spirit, your soul, separate from your, you know, living world body. That's what I mean by spiritual. So why, okay, let me start over. It's, if we don't put it out there that we notice these things, or that we recognize that there's a subliminal game being played, then it's our fault for being quiet and not sharing that recognition or empathy with others. And if we're wrong, then it won't be any different than saying, I think it's going to rain today, and then it doesn't, in my opinion. Because if you put it out there, then maybe and you say, I think it's going to rain today, even though the weatherman doesn't say so, maybe somebody will take an umbrella and they'll smile and they'll go, wow, glad I listened to Lori. It rained today and I have an umbrella. But this is far more serious than rain and an umbrella, because I see it every day. People at each other, unfriending people on Facebook. I'm going to unfriend you because you're not a Christian, or I'm going to unfriend you because you are a Christian, or I'm going to, on and on. So I want to take a second and go back into Charlie. I want you to explain kind of briefly how you have researched these religions and how they came to be. In other words, the root of the religion, not the spirituality part, but the actual dogmatic religions. There is an order, and there is a sort of serious connection between all of them.
There definitely is. And from these dogmatic religions stems an unbroken line of control that people seem to, or at least the masses seem to look over. And you guys are well aware of this. There's that run things, and like you were talking about, the New World Order. Basically, coming to these kind of conclusions, you have to navigate through tremendous amounts of disinformation. If you figure out, well, the Bible may be changed a little. If you go online and look, really preposterous websites of, atheists saying, just given invalid arguments. I mean, they'll say, yes, the Bible's changed, and they'll have a true premise, but their conclusion will be because, did this, and they'll compare it to Jesus and things like that, when there will be nothing, standing behind that. And the people looking will see that, and they'll just be like, well, they're trying to attack God and run directly back to religion. And you have that on the religious side. So my recommendation is, if you are doing any kind of research on the internet itself, which is a good place if you know how to use it, you're going to have to use a lot of cross-reference. You're going to have to challenge your beliefs a lot on the other side and see what kind of evidence there is supporting that. And you have to kind of get out of the internet too and go check the sources for yourselves. Find it. You can look at the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Sumerian tablets, If you do research on those, I kind of recommend, if you do look at things like Zecharia Sitchin or people who promote the ancient alien agenda, or if you do look at those, I definitely recommend you look at the Oxford version of the official, release, because there's a lot of dogma in people like that, because it's real important information that people know. And when people start waking up to it, it's just paying people off to go on YouTube or go to the internet and post articles on it. But there is a major connection with dogmatic religion. Essentially, when civilization came to be, when we first started using words, made an antithesis to our own spirituality. And by that I mean we made a bunch of, we saw these gods and higher beings as certain manifestations of the universe and whatnot. And it got to the point where people were taking their own ideas with it. Eventually, human sacrifice became a big thing. And people, the actual citizens started waking up. Well, maybe this pharaoh doesn't have, the divine right to rule from actually God, or, clean. These cults made an antithesis to their own antithesis, and people so much, and that they realize that, this is the way to control people, because when they start waking up, we have the narrative to already give them, and they're not going to see past that. Um,
Well,
this,
for one thing, most society that has grown up with some kind of a government, some kind of a ruler, either way, um, first of all, they want to believe that that ruler or that government is benevolent towards them, wants to take care of them, thinks that it's their job to take care of them and protect them. And so that's their first fallacy. There's very few benevolent rulers or governments ever been found in history. If they start that way, they don't end up that way, because the old rule of power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so with regards to religion today compared to religion thousands of years ago, what's the difference?
well, there's a pretty huge difference. For one, especially as far as the Abrahamic or Abrahamic faiths go. The base of it, you have polytheism. They used to say, they used to refer to God or their gods as the Elohim, and this is a plural word of Eloah, and it literally means gods. And our archaeologists have essentially, we've a long way as far as scripture scholarship goes, and we've determined when certain interpolations happened. It doesn't take much to go, this is why we need so many controlled oppositions groups, or why they need so many controlled oppositions groups, because just wake up and go online and say, well, half of the Bible is forged. The book of Deuteronomy was completely forged by Hilkiah, the high priest of a biblical king. And half of the Pauline epistles have been forged in the Bible. They don't come from Paul. There's verses in previous manuscripts of the Bible that just aren't there. Such as the end of the Lord's Prayer. You'll have, for thine is the power, the kingdom, and glory forever and ever. Amen. Have earlier manuscripts of the Bible that literally just don't have these verses. And when people start to see this, one of two things are going to happen. You're going to wake up to truth, or your cognitive dissonance is going to kick in, and your religion, which is essentially a plot of putting you on a higher ground because when you bow down to a specific control system and a God that's here to, enslave you, state narrative, and you're basically saying, well, I'm on a higher moral ground simply because I represent the narratives that have been given to me and the reality filters that have been given to me. And people don't understand that it's just a big slaving system.
Okay, so and I have this as firsthand experience, when I watched quite a few people become involved in flat Earth, start researching it, and immediately going to their Bible to see what the Bible says about it, because that's one of the things that they're used to doing. The Bible says something about just about everything. And so they went and looked for comparisons, for scripture, for guidance. And I heard more than once, many, many times, people said, oh, this brought me closer to my religion, looking into flat Earth, because it took me back to the Bible, and it made me start to look for evidence and support for flat Earth. And I'm suddenly, embracing God and the Bible much more than I had for years and years. And I can totally understand where that came from. And those, lots of times, not all the time, but lots of times, those are the same people who will argue scientific observation, observable, testable, repeatable scientific method. They'll argue that no, that's not right, because the Bible, that's not what the Bible says. And you know for yourself. You can have 20 people read the same book, maybe not the same scripture, one verse, but the same book of the Bible. And then you sit around in a study group and you say, okay, what did it say? What did you get from that? And you'll get the first 5 people maybe to, have their own unbiased opinion about what they read. And then once they state it, you'll find that most other people in the group will agree with one of those people and maybe expound on it a little bit, but they'll start to become a collective very quickly, okay, which is a religion concept in and of itself. And so, but I keep having to remind myself, why we're having this conversation. And that is because I can be a flat earther or a non-flat earther. I can be just a person, human being, and not find a reason on any given day to go out and get mad and bash and just try to destroy someone's spiritual belief because they believe differently than I do. Or they believe something and I don't believe anything. And one of the things that happens to a truther, in almost across the board in every case, once you start questioning something, questioning everything. And once you start questioning everything, you get in this, you're standing out in the middle of a desert with nothing. I mean, nothing but sand. Okay. Let's like go to the Sahara. Okay. Not even like plants or rocks. And you have no ground to base anything on. You have no beliefs because you become this person who's starting to, push away everything because there's so many lies. And instead of embracing each other and saying, okay, can we start to build some finite truths here, something that we all agree on? Where do we start? Well, okay, the sand is sand colored. The sky is blue. Okay, there's 2 things. And then, you start to build on that. But in what's happening is a reverse right now. There's a tear down of everything. The Mandela effect popped up. Okay. The Mandela effect says, well, things have changed from when I was younger. Okay. Well, I mean, you could have got rebooted and your computer code got changed while you were sleeping, and you now live in version 3.7 and everybody else is in 2.9. And of course you think differently. Okay. That's just one way to explain it. There's 1,000 other ways. I mean, they literally can be changing things. Lawrence and I have been witness to things being added and subtracted from the internet, period. That once was there, now it's not there anymore, or now it's there in a different version than it was there a few days ago. And if the narrative calls for a change, and this is where, the Bible's the same thing. If the narrative calls for a change, then let's just, we have the power of Google. I mean, the controllers. Let's just add some disinfo, some counterintelligence in there, and screw up the whole thing. So you throw the monkey wrench into the engine. And so what do you think the chances are when you say, and you said a very valid thing, cross-referencing the information, do not just get it from one source, get it from as many multiple sources as you possibly can, and make sure that, because you've seen the news enough times now. When something goes on the news, everybody repeats verbatim the same thing that the news media told them to say, verbatim, the same headline, the same reported mantra. What are the chances that the Sumerian tablets are? What are the chances that the ancient texts have been altered?
I would say a very high chance, because a lot of mythologies construed in ancient religions, even in Hinduism and Egyptology, you'll have multiple creation stories, took and ran whatever direction they wanted to, but it all stemmed from the certain rulers that gave certain narratives. It's just like today, and I know a lot of new things are happening today. The internet information is more widely available. There's a lot more controlled opposition, out of extensive moves with the New World Order. But essentially, there's nothing really too new about the control system. It's pretty much stayed the same because it's so intricate. As far as the flat Earth thing goes with the Christian community, you have to ask yourself where getting their insight from. Getting it from they obviously don't believe the Bible has changed. So, but are they even getting their information from the Bible? And they were getting their information from what a preacher told them about the Bible. The preacher would always tell them the earth is round, things of that nature. Well, when they start figuring out that NASA is, lying, and they start questioning things, and if they do happen to become a flat earther, they're going to get their information from a bunch of Christian YouTubers. It's the narrative, and it's what people tell you to think, because the Bible is a very esoteric book. It's meanings in it. There are a lot of verses where Jesus himself says, if you don't have the ears to see and eyes to hear, you will not understand it. Things of that nature get their esoteric definition given to them by priests and preachers. There's a lot of Protestants have even woken up to the fact that, well, Catholicism is a pagan religion. Catholicism isn't true Christianity. But if you go deeper into it, preachers are nothing more than priests model. And the Protestant Reformation was funded by literally Jesuits, such as the Counter-Reformation. It was all opposition, like it's been from the beginning. And these rulers understand psychology so much, and they keep us from it so much, that they can just re-implement the system of control. Actually got what you were talking about earlier, which is a new world government under a new world religion, under a new economy system. Sure.
Okay, so if the information that the religion or the philosophy is based on, whether like I said, whether you're a Christian or whether you're Muslim or an atheist, okay, if the basis of the information that the religious dogma was built around is in itself based in some mythology, or based in some control mechanism that was put in place, or controlled opposition method that was put in place thousands of years ago, okay? And I'll give you an example. There are people today who say there were never any giants. That's all, bogus mythological crap, okay? And then if you go online, you will find people digging up giant bones, or you will find a museum here or there off a beaten path in Arkansas, for example, who has some giant femur bone or something that was discovered. And then you go and watch something like Men in Black, the movie, where they literally show you that there are these teams that come in, and not the part about erasing people's minds, but once you take away the evidence, the people's minds have no way of proving that what they ever saw was real, because they don't have any physical evidence, any proof. And giant bones have been collected for centuries. And you know, people have dug up dinosaurs, and people say, no, there's no dinosaurs. There were never any dinosaurs. And so what are those things that they've got all wired together in the museum? Did somebody make them with a mold and hang them up there where you're not allowed to touch them? So you would have, and they were so finished to look like they were, you know, millions and millions of years old. And so reality in anybody's day-to-day world is based on the same thing: touch, feel, see, evidence, physical evidence, not just years and years of stories. I got a big kick out of last night watching this crazy movie from 2010 called Troll Hunter. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it was really actually an awesome movie. Okay. They start off by saying this film footage was found, and the people were never located that were, you know, in this film, and it has been analyzed for its veracity, and no one can find that it isn't real, that it isn't actual footage. They can find no evidence of CGI or computer manipulation, blah, blah. So you start to watch it thinking that it's a documentary based on actual footage, okay? And then there's trolls on the film, giant 3-headed trolls, and crashing through the woods. And, you know, this guy that's a troll hunter, it's in Norway. The kids are all excited and, you know, fear and all this stuff, right? And they're actually filming and they're showing these trolls, and it looks pretty darn real, okay? And then at the end, you know, it's this quick ending, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody because now I know that people will go and look it up on Netflix, but I highly recommend you watch it because it's a perfect example of how you can tell someone this is real. You can tell them that this was peer reviewed by CGI experts and was found to be authentic, okay? And then you watch it and you go, no freaking way. There's a 200-foot troll on here. How could a 200-foot troll be anywhere that now that nobody would see it or find it? I mean, there's not that many places left in the world where there's like nobody, right, to see it. And how could they be hiding it? And they had this guy who was the government guy who goes and cleans up all the mess, and they bring these bear carcasses in and say a bear ate all these sheep. And I mean, it's just really well done. But the point of the matter is, it shows that if you say, authority figures say that this looks true, then it must be, because everybody accepts what authority figures say. So to me, that's the same kind of thing that's happened across the board with religion, you know, history, mythology, all of that. It's all been somehow manipulated in some way. And it's up to every single individual to make their own decision based on, you know, their own experiences, what they choose to believe. But don't act like you're the only one in the world that knows for certain that whatever you think is true because you've done the research is in fact true, and that everyone else is stupid because they don't believe the same thing you'd believe or don't take your word for it across the board. Lawrence.
Oh, unmute.
I got you.
Yeah.
I'm taking care of you tonight.
A bit of a random thing here, though, Rick. What I was
All
listening,
right. I like random.
obviously, I just went into Google and I just typed in "sits above," and Google filled the rest of it in for me. It filled in "sits above the circle of the earth," and I've got my conception of what that means is that when the Creator, God, or whoever created us, I believe it's a divine force, but I don't have any religion, but I know there's a divine force out there, that when this place we're in was created, there was a circle of earth surrounded by seas. I don't think that whoever created this place would create continents with all the squiggly shapes they've got now. It would have probably been something that was a perfect shape. So a circle will be, would fit in with "he sits above the circle of the earth," which was, if you're going to use some biblical evidence to say, well, how did it get how it is now? The Tower of Babel time, when we got all these new languages and everything was separated in different places, and the circle of the earth then became the continents that we have now, and some of them were moved south because if you look at all the pagan festivals, they're based on that there is only a northern hemisphere, because the winter solstice for the pagan festivals is the winter of the north. It's not the winter of Australia. Australia have their winter in June. They don't have it in December. So the circle of the earth is what a lot of the religious people go off as substantiating the flat earth, and it helps them to substantiate the false model of the flat earth, because it's not a circle, but so many people think it's a circle, particularly the religious people within flat earth. But we've proved beyond any reason, it would be provable in a court of law if we actually got to present it to a court of law, that we've been sold a false model. So I don't know. Are you into flat earth at all, Charlie, or are you just sort of have you just sort of dabbled in it, or have you got any views? Or how did you get into? Did you actually? Obviously, you've heard of flat earth. How did you actually find out about it?
I've done heavy research on the topic, actually, because it definitely interests me. I believe I just stumbled on the topic. I believe it was just like a YouTube video or so, and I had the initial reaction of, this is complete BS. What kind of conspiracy is this? Just like everyone else would. And then I realized that, as I got deep into it, that this is legitimate skepticism. This the entire community is completely because the fact of the matter is that NASA is full of shit, and that Jesuits have their hand into heliocentrism. And I'm not one to believe really anything that I'm told about space in general. I've seen the wires that they use. I've seen the bubbles in their videos. I've seen the moon landing BS. I'm aware of stuff. So,
Have you, Charlie? Have you actually had a look at some of these videos of the so-called planets? So, for example, Venus. If you look at these videos, it's almost as though you're looking at a single-celled organism, like a little amoeba with all little things. They're all moving around, like it's a cell structure with bits and pieces inside it, almost as though the stars or the planets out there, they are some kind of sentient beings with intelligence, which would sort of lend weight to credence to astrology, which predated astronomy. Have you actually looked at this stuff?
I have, yeah. I've looked at that. I've looked at videos of you'll see stars through telescopes, and they'll just be doing, and they'll look
Say
nothing
that
like
again.
sun.
Say that again. You kind of bottomed out there for a second or cut out.
So,
You looked at stars through a telescope and they look like what?
well, I've looked at videos of stars through telescopes, and I've seen how they look nothing like suns. I've seen planets through telescopes, and I definitely have seen information like that, which is why I haven't. It's not as if I'm a standard heliocentrist or glober. I'm a skeptic of it all. I'm a globe skeptic, I would even say. But as far as the flat Earth is concerned, submitted to this, and I'm going to actually talk about the subject in depth in a later video on my channel. You a little more in depth because I probably just don't have time to here. I'm all for supporting the community, and I'm all for what you guys stand for, and I'm all for backing it up because I know it gets a lot of hate, and I know that it comes from an area of legitimate skepticism. So that is my stance on it, pretty much.
Okay. Do you when you looked into flat Earth initially and watched a few videos, what was being promoted to you, or that you sort of caught as this is what these flat earthers believe?
Okay.
Was it this circular model with the sun and the moon going around in a circle and a little dome over the top and like that? Is that what you saw?
The first ones, yeah, that was the first videos I've saw, but I will say that I've seen many models. I've seen something they call the Pac-Man moon model. I've seen what you're talking about, like the classic Hebrew model, and infinite plane model, which would be more valid. I would think that would be the highest possibility. I still personally believe been proven to me that there even is a globe, but I still personally consider the possibility. I haven't had that wiped clean. I can look outside and I can see, it appears to be flat, but not everything is as it seems. So I'm still in the process of kind of coming to my conclusions on it. So,
well, and that right therein lies the problem often of it's not what it seems. Humans only have their five senses to base and to base things on, and a brain to be able to collect this information together, and whether or not that brain is abstract enough to be able to take all of those different parts, the seen, the felt, the heard, and make their own model in their head, their own imaginary, what does all of this add up to? Okay. One thing that happens, and this is classic mind control, is most people form these kinds of opinions and these imaginary ideas in their head when they're very young, when they're children, and which is why they start you out with first day of school, there's a globe on the teacher's desk. And when is the first time in your life when you learn about, all the planets and the stars and what the sun is made out of and the size and all that? It's when you're in early grade school, and it's all dumped on you and crammed into your head very early. And unless you're really jazzed by all of that and go on to more mature studies about it in secondary and advanced school, you learn everything they need you to know very quickly while you're moldable, right? And the same thing happens with most people with religion. Most religion is based on the culture that you are born into. So if you're, an American, you're probably going to get Sunday school and Christianity, unless your parents are secular and you don't get anything. And then you kind of come upon it on your own at some point. But if you're born in India, or if you're born in Africa, or if you're born in, Japan, you're going to get indoctrinated into the same belief system that your parents and grandparents and everybody that came before you were. So, in my opinion, I'm proud of you for taking the responsibility for yourself, and each of us should do this, to do this research, and instead of spending thousands of hours watching reality TV or football games or whatever. I mean, I would rather see people out in the school of nature than stuck in front of a television getting dosed with reality. So I'm proud of you for taking the time to do this research. And if you were to tell anyone else, I mean, obviously, we'll promote your video in the description of this video and your channel. I think you only have one video out so far, which I'm kind of glad I found you, since you only have just started the channel a few months ago, I think, and have a few subscribers and one video. I would promote you to do more, because I think you did a good job on the one that you did. And I appreciate you coming and hanging out with us, because I'm not going to give up on this niggling feeling that my intuition tells me is the beginning of a very strong anti-religion movement that is not organic, that is being coerced and scripted by the controllers. So Lawrence, let me finish this, because I was going to say, if you were to give advice on the path that you took, many people who do a lot of research do one thing wrong, and I'm just as guilty. They don't create a log of the path of their research, both to remind themselves where they started and where, the path they took, but to help to, provide that research to others. Only some of the better books that I've ever read have the bibliography that's like of this source and that source. How would you direct people to start, and how can you promote someone to have an open mind who has already been indoctrinated or ingrained into a particular religion, not to get them out of it, but to test and question it for themselves?
Okay. Essentially, if you'd like to kind of sort of red pill people on that, the best approach is to make it very clear that you are not out to strip them of their faith, because personally, I'm not out to do that either. I don't think anyone should be. If anyone's going to be a Hindu and believe that the sole reason they have salvation is because of Shiva or Krishna or things of that nature, that's perfectly fine. And community, are, they see Jesus as the absolute, or they are salvation. Sometimes I feel as if words can represent different things. And I've met a lot of Christians who will be just as open-minded and much of truth seekers as, people like you or people like us are. And that's because I feel as if words, someone could use Jesus interchangeable with like divine spark or God spark or something like that, depending on their mindset. But you just have to make it clear that if you are going to have this faith and be dedicated to this religion, I have some information that you may find, applicable, because there's an attack on your spirituality, regardless of what your religious filter is. And the attack is, you're led to believe these holy books and religious books are 100% infallible and God breathed. It's basically biased faith in man disguised as divine faith in God, is like what I would like to put it. And basically, you're just going to ask them, what is it that makes you find 100% truth within your holy books and within your religious institutions? Out of the way, it all kind of falls into place. You'll and why it is that the whole entire community is divided, because with Christianity, there are an insane amount of certain sects of it, in Catholicism and Protestantism and all of it. And you have to point out, this is you're given a narrative and you're given an altered Bible and you're being told that it's God breathed. And we have a common enemy sort of that gets our anger riled up, and it's the people that are enslaving us with these belief systems. But they'll direct that anger against our brothers and sisters simply because they can. They'll hide themselves from it in the process, and a lot of people are victims of that. So just truth, just kindness, operation, and respect for other people's faith is how I would approach this.
Okay, that's legit.
And as far as like we were on the flat Earth subject earlier, I hope you guys don't mind if you could entertain a couple of questions of mine.
Sure, love to. Well, that's Lawrence's favorite thing.
Yeah, Lawrence talked about it, so I figured he might. But how do you is there any workaround for explaining phenomena such as that? Okay, a lot of people are waking up to 9/11. A lot of people are pretty much set that it was a inside job by the government. A lot of people in the masses are pretty much aware of that because it was frankly a really shitty job. Question is, that these are the same controllers that did that false flag invasion as the ones who did what you would call the false flag. How is it that this one is so intricate and that things such as 9/11 and conspiracies like that are so sloppy? And one more question.
Hold on, let me make sure, because you're cutting out a little bit here and there. Maybe it would help if you turn your camera off at this point, because it's probably dragging it down and your audio may be better. But you're saying that why is the flat Earth conspiracy so much better and intricate than a sloppy job like 9/11? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Pretty much, yes.
Before Lawrence cuts in, and then you can ask you can ask as many questions as you want, but one thing is for certain. 9/11 was 16 years ago. The heliocentric lie was hundreds of years ago. And so they've had plenty of time to create as many ad hoc reverse engineered theories as they need, like spin and gravity, and why you can't see the curve because you can't get far enough above the earth to be able to witness it. And, you know, all of these, you got people like, you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's Mr. Astrophysicist, who is constantly coming up with one bullshit line after another for why space works and dark matter and can't see it, but it's there. And, you know, so hundreds of years of time to create as many levels and layers of necessary explanations, be they bullshit or not, versus a few years like 9/11. You go with that, Lawrence, whatever.
Well, just, I mean, I was in at 9/11 at the start, and the powers that be, obviously they put their people in right at the start with the conspiracy theories, communities theories, and then there were more other theories that came in that conflicted. So the first one that came in within the conspiracy world, which brought great division, was the planes versus the no planes. And then beyond that, it became that everything was CGI. I'm taking the view that the 9/11 was a movie. Aside from taking down 2 buildings under a smoke screen, I think the whole thing was a movie, and nobody died. There may have been a few people died collaterally, but people jumping through from buildings and stuff like that, there's plenty of evidence to show that these were just dummies that were thrown out, and the streets were full of actors. In fact, some of the actors played different parts in different disguises. There's a wealth of information out there. So 9/11 was, you know, there was a conspiracy, and it was deliberately, you know, faction. Then Judy Wood came in saying there was space beams, you know,
Directed energy weapon
down, and so the whole thing's just become a big mess. And some people are in one camp and some are in others, and but I think the whole thing was a movie. And with flat Earth, it's going the same way, but they seem to have got most people on board by weight of numbers for an enclosed world, you know, where there's no escape. But if you take the view that the Earth is an enclosed world, and a flat Earth with a dome is another enclosed world, it's just swapping one prison for another. And that's where it seems to be going now. And if you look at the flat Earth, so-called flat Earth conference coming up in the autumn of this year, everybody there is an enclosed world individual with a false model, and the people as speakers, they're all bought and paid for in some sort of way, or their mind has been controlled for them to think in a certain way. Obviously, amongst those people, there are what you call wannabes, and these are like groups of people who they were sad people in the past. There wasn't much in their life, and flat Earth came along, and for the first time in their life, they got some attention, and it made them feel good. And they put out endless videos with no content other than to chat about their lives, and that's where it is now. It's the whole thing it's stagnant, you know. And those that are still promoting the false model, they're doing so in many cases in full knowledge that they are deceiving people.
Well, Lawrence, for one thing, you know, what the question that he's asking is how that 9/11 was so sloppy, and that people were able to figure out that it is not what they told us it was. And he's comparing it to the heliocentric model that it's not that sloppy, obviously, or it wouldn't have fooled everyone mostly for all these years. So what he's comparing, what he's asking us to compare is how were they so good at fooling us about the flat earth versus, you know, the heliocentric model, when the same controllers, just a newer version, were so crappy at fooling us with 9/11.
Yeah, well,
Is that phrase right, Charlie?
Yeah, pretty much. Not necessarily heliocentrism and space travel and things of that sort, because you know I understand just pretty much the globe model itself. You know, that's what I'm comparing it to.
Well, for whatever reason, they needed an enclosed world 500 years ago, or whenever it was, that, you know, because we don't know the timelines that we're given in the history books are correct. I mean, you know,
Right.
These people by the name of Copernicus may well be works of fiction, as well as all these so-called, you know, these grand sounding Greek philosophers. I mean, we don't know that they existed. You know, the library at Alexandria was burned to the ground very conveniently, so there are no existing works from these people that you can actually go and see. So, but yeah, so they brought in an enclosed world. They wanted an enclosed world so that people thought that was all there is, and there was nowhere else for them to go. So they wanted, you know.
Well, and for the control of resources, scarcity, all of those reasons why, you know, how could you come up with an idea that all of us are going to be dead in a few years with global warming, unless we all reduce our carbon footprint? And so instead we'll just tax everyone so that we okay. So the idea of an enclosed world, and this is, you know, part of our argument, is that with a dome over the top of it. I mean, somebody like Mark Sargent constantly refers to a Truman Show enclosed world, dome, whatever, Truman Show dome enclosed world or whatever, but it's the same repeated concept. In fact, that is why some people say that flat earth was introduced originally by the controllers themselves as a psyop, so that they could put into place the narrative and the concept that they wanted us to believe in. If it's going to be a flat earth, and then it needs to have a dome over it, and you know, we're surrounded by an ice wall, and you can't get out. You can't get over the ice wall any easier than you can get out of the atmosphere and get out of into outer space. So it's the same kind of enclosed concept.
Yeah.
Okay, we beat that horse. What was your other question?
My other question was essentially satellites. Is there any kind of theories on, you know, what that might be in the sky? And we'll see like the International Space Station with their telescopes.
Well, I, for one, do not believe, I think everything about the International Space Station is CGI. I do not believe that there is a geostationary orbit around a globe with the ISS on it, filming the Earth as they go by, and all of the experiments that they show us inside. Many very smart people have shown alternate ways that you can perform those same experiments. A new one that I just saw yesterday was diamagnetic tube. You can go on the internet or go on YouTube and see the video. It's called diamagnetic, and it's performed in a tube. And if you have a strong enough magnet, they show floating a frog at zero gravity. There appears to be zero gravity inside this tube, and it didn't hurt the frog. So they said it does nothing. They put a tomato and a strawberry, you know, soft tissue, biological items in there, and it was no damage. by the magnetism. So first of all, there is no International Space Station flying over. I don't care what people see with their telescopes. You know,
Right.
I've seen the space station flying in front of the moon. No, probably what you saw was a high altitude or a low altitude drone that was in the shape of a space station. I mean, you know, how hard would it be? They tell you when it's going to fly over. How hard would it be to put a to scale drone up there that looks just like the International Space Station? And it could be solar powered and last for days and days without, you know, any problems. And nobody's going to be seeing it while it's flying over the gigantic Pacific Ocean, right?
So that
right.
We can have something that would effectively beat a satellite, but they're only going to be a few miles up, and they can, you know, if you believed in the globe, they do keep coming back and but they're just, you know, getting to the end of the realm and then re-emerging in the other side, Charles. That's what I think's happening. But if you think about it in terms of satellites themselves, in terms of things in the sky that are sending information down, well, other than taking photographs, I don't think there are any, because, you know, I can travel 20 miles outside a city and all the reception goes on my sat nav on the car. It just cuts out. It's not there anymore. So, you know, everything that we use for the so-called sat nav is not from satellites, but from ground-based stations. And you know, I've had sat nav first came out, and that was always the case. As soon as you get anywhere rural, out away from the city, it starts breaking up.
So, like,
Charles, there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands, I think like 500,000 plus miles of suboceanic fiber optic cable laid all over this world, connecting the continents. Once it gets to the continents, then there's ground-based giant antennas. I don't know if you've ever looked up, but there's like 1,500 feet tall antennas, and antennas on top of the high buildings in the cities, and Gwen towers all over the place, and so on. So there's no reason. You have radar that can bounce off of an airplane, but you can't get a satellite signal from out in a rural neighborhood. So
Charles,
most of the communication, they admit, is ground-based.
Right.
Charles, just going back to Flat Earth, Charles, you know, I mean, this channel that Laurie and myself do occasional hangouts now, we don't do them every week. And we are probably one of the very few genuine channels out there who are interested in finding out where we are and actually trying to do some research. And in terms of conclusive evidence, have you heard of somebody called ODD TV?
I have, yes. Yeah. I haven't watched too.
All right. Well, he's like a barefaced liar because he's pushing the Gleason map. I mean, have you ever seen the Gleason map?
I don't believe I have.
That's that big pink round map that looks like it's got little arms in the center.
Well, everybody in this flat Earth community, 95% of those who get good sized audiences will tell you that the flat Earth is surrounded by a ring of ice which holds in the water. Yeah,
right.
Which is a barefaced lie. There is no ice ring, and we dismantled the map, the Gleason map, which came out about a year after Flat Earth kicked off, is a complete forgery. If you look at some of our back issues, you can see all the evidence on that, you know, and they've even altered books since, altered, you know, historic information to make it look like, you know, something is different to what it really is.
So I'm sorry. Charles, what other anomalies have really kind of stumbled you up a little bit?
That's honestly it. To be real,
I mean,
it's
you haven't got you don't have problems with things like, because these are the ones we hear all the time. What about the Coriolis effect? And what
I have
about
no
eclipses? And what about, okay, things like that.
I have
You haven't
no
gotten that
problem.
far.
I have no problem with the Coriolis effect or anything of that nature, because that's totally. Look, I mean, I've seen Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about kicking a football and having to account for the rotate of the Earth, and I've seen things on it, and then the people in airplanes don't have to account for it because of the atmosphere is rotating with us. We're like, which one is it?
Right.
I'm open. Hey, I'm open-minded to the entire thing, and it's a really interesting point. So
Charles, do you still entertain the thought that that we could be living on a globe?
Yeah, I definitely still entertain that thought.
You do? Okay. Have you looked at a globe recently? If you looked at a globe,
yeah, I've looked at the pictures
whereabouts
of it.
do you live in the States?
Yeah, I live in the United States.
What latitude are you at?
I couldn't really tell you the latitude. I'm in pretty much northern Florida.
All right, so you're wherever. You're about 30 degrees north or somewhere around in that region?
Yeah, around that, yeah.
All right. So if you really lived on a globe, then the angle of the earth beneath your feet would be sloping away from you at an angle of 60 degrees. Everywhere. There will be no flat lands at all. It would either be up going north or down going south. The elevation beneath your feet would be the same as it would be on a sphere. If people want to entertain the idea of a sphere, then you have to have the elevations of the ground beneath your feet the same as what it would be on a sphere. But that wherever you go, you can go to any beach and look out at the horizon. The sea is always going out horizontally wherever you are. Which would be impossible. You can't, if you went along the coastline of an entire country and all of it was flat, and you got a jigsaw of all these pieces and put them together, and all of them are flat, if you put them all together, then the whole thing is going to be flat. And life would be impossible to live in where you are now, because getting from A to B, you would need mountain boots. In
other words, Charles, what he's saying is, for example, I live in Southwest Florida, okay, from you, that if you lived on a globe, you would have to walk downhill on that globe to get to where I live. And if you kept walking, the elevation would get so steep that unless you had mountain climbing boots and then ropes and pennants to keep hanging on. The reason why we're saying that is without spin, without gravity, those two theories that have never been proven would be necessary in order for you to be able to just walk down the globe to where I am. And what about those poor bastards that live in Australia? They literally would be clinging to Earth upside down. You would have to live your life attached to the ground if you took away gravity. That's what he's saying. Charles, so that's one of the more bizarre ideas of Florence's for flat Earth.
Charles,
but
imagine you've got a globe in your hand right now. Yeah. Are you still there, mate?
Yes,
you've
sir.
You've got a globe in your hand. Okay. Now, on that globe, and you've got some little tin soldiers or little tiny soldiers. Can you put those men, those little soldiers, everywhere on your globe and for all of them to stand upright?
No.
So why would you think you live on a globe? Because that reality is that wherever you go on this earth, can you or can you not stand upright?
Yeah, you definitely can stand upright if you go
So
on the
how would that
actual.
work on the globe then? What would your reasoning be for thinking you were living on a globe if you cannot even make a model of it? I could make a model of the
Right.
flat Earth where everybody can stand upright. I could make a model of the flat Earth where aeroplanes can go 10,000 miles and remain parallel to the surface of the Earth without the nose tipping down. But you cannot do that with your model, can you, if you were entertaining the idea that you lived on a globe?
No, definitely. Yeah, I
Or
have
if you was
no
going to
working.
sail a boat, if you was going to go on a world cruise, all and go east west all the way around, and you imagine doing that on a globe, the boat couldn't be upright, could it? It would be hanging off the side, and it would either be going uphill, downhill, or be listing so badly that it would tipple over.
Right. Yeah. There are no working models that I
So,
can see in the
so,
natural world supporting
so
that.
from a model point of view, purely from a model point of view, the flat Earth matches reality, but the globe doesn't. You
I see
cannot,
that position.
you cannot mirror any reality whatsoever from a model base with the globe, but with the flat Earth, we can. Everything fits.
Right. I've seen things personally fit pretty well with a lot of different models, and I've seen that the infinite plane model of flat Earth is completely resonant with reality, and I'm well aware that there are no working models of the globe that I can observe in this Earth. I'm perfectly aware of that for sure. The thing, Lawrence, is that I'm aware of how much I don't know. So your math seemed right, and I mean it sounds like you guys know what you're talking about for
Well,
sure.
yeah, we would agree with you in terms of an infinite plane, Charles, but the infinite plane that we think best fits reality is a repeating infinite plane, so that east becomes west and west becomes east, depending on which way you're going, and it's repeating the same land. Now, obviously, what's north and south may be some kind of infinite plane that is different, i.e., if you go east and west, everything is the same, and if you go north and south, well, we don't know because we're not allowed to go there, or we haven't got
Right.
the means or resources to go and have a look what is beyond there. And it seems, based on information that they don't really want us to go and have a look in those areas.
Hey, Charles, let
Right.
me ask you a question. Okay. This
Okay.
is one of my observations that I've, you know, really, really worked on. Okay.
All right.
Have you ever been outside and seen the moon in the sky and the sun up at the same time?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever seen a full moon in the middle of the night when you know that the sun has to be on the other side of the globe?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me what you think is lighting the moon if the Earth's in the way?
Oh, what I think is, so if I know for certain that the sun was on the other side lighting the moon, no, I actually am open-minded to the idea that the moon could be its own light source.
Okay. So, so that own light source part would work whether or not you believed in the globe or not, because it could be up in the sky at the same time as the sun, or it can be opposite the earth, opposite the Earth with the sun on the other side and still be lit. Is that what you're
I
saying?
see. Yes, I see. I see that it could
So
work in
that
a
fits.
sense.
So in
No,
other
I'm
words,
saying,
that fits with both models.
oh, I actually don't submit to that fitting both models. If it is the globe, which, I'm pretty sure you'd have to account for the sunlight being a cause of it.
Okay. So when you are out and you see this moon and you see it with a little sliver of let's say new moon, or a whatever early, I don't know what they call that one, gibbous or something, okay, where most of it's dark and a little sliver of it is lit, okay? Isn't the Earth's shadow supposed to be making the part dark that's dark?
Yeah, that's supposed to be Earth's shadow for sure.
Okay. Then how, have you ever seen a moon with a little sliver and the rest of it in shadow?
Right, like
Up
a
in the
crescent moon.
sky, up at the sky, up in the sky at the same time the sun's up there?
I'm sure I have.
Okay, and then what makes the shadow?
Good
If
question.
the Earth is down here and the moon's up there and the sun's up there, both, what's making the shadow, that curved shadow on there?
That's a good question. I wouldn't
That's a
know
very
how
good
to answer that.
question. This is what critical thinking does to you.
Of course,
Once
yeah.
once you start to notice these anomalies, you can't help but notice all of them.
Of course.
When you find one that doesn't fit into the hypothesis, then which one do you throw out, the hypothesis or the thing that doesn't fit?
I definitely throw out what doesn't fit.
Well, you shouldn't. You should throw out the hypothesis, because if an observation does not fit the hypothesis, then your hypothesis is incorrect.
I see how you're wording that.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so,
I was just saying the hypothesis that didn't fit. But I'm going to be the first to admit, like, that's the reason I'm asking you guys questions. Like, I know that I need to research the topic more.
Okay, and so here, just like I asked you how to do it, how to research religion and the history and bases of religion. The same thing applies with researching the Earth, not just researching flat Earth. Just start completely over and wipe out all of the hypotheses or theories that you were taught as a child and throughout your life by reminding and brainwashing. Throw them all out and start completely over. Okay? You do not have to commit your entire life to this. You only have to commit enough of it to answer the question for yourself: is the story that we've been taught correct, or are there observations that destroy the hypothesis or the theory? Right?
There are definitely observations that destroy the hypothesis of what we've been presented. I've a good minute. Okay. So yeah, I'm actually in the process of doing what you're saying.
Good.
As researching goes.
Well,
because,
and I'm doing the same with the history of religion, because I'm having a hard time myself because of experiences in my own life, throwing out the baby with the bathwater when it comes to basically Christian belief. And that is because of things like I've prayed for things and my prayers have been answered. There's only two ways to decide what happened. Okay. Did I manifest that by that whole theory of what is it, of attraction, or did some more powerful supernatural entity than myself grant my request?
Right.
What is that supernatural power or entity? Is it an all-knowing, all-powerful being that did in fact create all of this? Or is it simply that I'm in the matrix and the architect granted my request by changing the code? Okay.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? And so if you have an open mind, you can entertain two opposing thoughts at the same time without accepting either one.
Right.
Correct? Okay.
Correct.
So that's where you are right now with flat Earth versus globe Earth. You're trying to entertain both contrasting ideas
Right.
without giving up the globe. Okay.
Right.
Now, all you have to do is take the one step further and give up the globe and start all over with all new input and all new observation and come to your own conclusion. And that's how most people become flat earthers, because sooner or later, the things that fit the globe do not fit the flat earth. They're damn close.
Right.
They were really cleverly disguised theories that if you take out one of them, for example, if you take out the spin, then everybody goes flying off. Or I mean, if you take off the gravity, everybody goes flying off because it's spinning. If you take off the spin, then all of that stuff that's going on out there in the sky doesn't work. You see what I'm saying? Everything is inextricably tied to everything else. And so each of these phenomena need to stand on their own merit. Okay. All right. So,
yeah, that makes.
Okay. I'm going to wrap up at 8 o'clock. We have about 10 minutes. So I would like for both of you guys, because I always talk more than anybody else in the show, always, all the time. And I can't help myself because I have a lot to say, and I probably just need to shut up more, but that's how it goes sometimes. But I'd like for you two to take the remaining 10 minutes and put something out there for the viewers who are going to watch this and or listen to this on Hipcast or iTunes as an MP3 later. Something powerful you'd like to say, or just an idea, a thought. And Charles, you go first.
Okay, cool. So I feel like that was a pretty interesting conversation. As far as the globe and that conversation is concerned, I have in the sense that I don't accept it as fact. And but in my videos, I actually do not push a globe model or a flat Earth model, because I'm honest with myself and know that I don't have enough behind my belt just yet to come to, because that's not my domain. My domain's pretty much the history of religion, because it's so applicable in every topic. Like you said, in the flat Earth community, super valid thing, because so many people are pushing certain models. And then I hope what viewers get out of this video is that we can learn from each other, even if there are opposing views, by coming from area of discernment in the same area of truth seeking. Poking and calling names, getting pissed at a movement because it disagrees with the narrative society's given you, nature. And I just thank you guys for the opportunity to be on the show. My input.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come and talk with us, because what you're doing and what we're doing is powerful stuff, because we're breaking outside of the mold of the typical dogma out there, be it religion or be it science or whatever, globe science. We're asking questions, and they're legitimate questions, and we both have skepticism. We all have skepticism, and instead of just saying, well, I don't know and I don't really care, we're trying to care about it. So thank you for that too. Lawrence, have you been working on anything? Do you have anything new new revelation that you've come upon?
Well, the problem is sometimes I can't remember whether I've mentioned other things before, but I'm taking a view of the possibility that we are alien to this Earth, and we are not from another planet, because we don't believe in planets. But if you look at the human species, you know, we're not very good. We're not very well adapted to the place that we live in. We wear clothes, spectacles, and we can't even synthesize the things that we need to survive without taking it from a food source. So, for an example, humans, you will die without vitamin C, but my dog can synthesize his own vitamin C. And in fact, some creatures can synthesize things out of thin air. So the crayfish, or the crawfish as you call it, can synthesize its own calcium in order to make its shell. There was an experiment at an American university where they removed, by precipitation, they removed all the calcium from some seawater and put the crayfish in there, and so there was no calcium to grow a shell, and they grew their shell anyway. So where did it come from? The creature managed to synthesize it. So, you know, is that magic, or, you know, are we living outside the realm, you know, that we originated from? Are we aliens to the earth, because we're not very well adapted to living here? You know, we need to build houses and wear clothes and have certain types of food. We're pretty poorly adapted to survival, aren't we?
Right. No, I agree with that. I just saw a movie about, here I'm always railing on people about watching too much TV, but I do try to watch movies that I can learn something from other than Troll Hunter, but that was entertainment. About these guys that climbed the face of this mountain in Peru, and the one guy got separated from the other guy. He cut the rope, and he fell down into an ice cave and crawled across. And I thought, holy crap, there's no way I could have survived all that. I mean, the cold and the no food and the no water and the injury, broke his leg. And what you're saying is true. We're really not that well adapted to here.
Yeah, well, maybe we're a flawed species. I mean, you know,
or maybe we were brought in from one of the other ponds that, you know, Eden, for example, that we were better adapted to.
You know, having to eat and drink and all this sort of stuff on a regular basis, and keep going to the bathroom every day. I mean, it seems pretty crazy, doesn't it? I mean, I know people.
Well, yeah.
These people that
I guess you didn't read the book Everything Poops.
Yeah. Well, maybe not. No.
Okay, hold on. Before you go off into something else, I want you to bring us up to date on the quinoa experiment.
The quinoa is still. I've got it on top of the shelf in there. If you want me to bring, I'll have to put lights on. I can show you. Just a minute.
Yeah, please do. While he's doing that, Lawrence jarred up 2 batches of quinoa, which is quinoa, if you don't know how it's spelled, and it's a rice and rice based, and he wrote love words on one and hate words on the other. He didn't talk to the jars. He only put the words on there, and I'll let him show you. This started last July.
So if you look at this one, this is from last July.
Don't open it.
Now this is the one that says love, gratitude, and thank you. And you can still see by looking at the jar. I don't know whether you can see the contents.
Oh, okay.
There's not a speck of mold or anything in there. It's all clean. You know, you look underneath it, the quinoa, and then on the other one, this one says hatred. You make me sick, I'll kill you. There we go. And then if you look at the color, I'll take a deep breath.
Turn it around.
And then you can have a look inside.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
You see inside the other one. That one stinks. Oh, stinks. And this one still smells as fresh as the day I put it in.
Boy, that is amazing.
So that's what words can do to things. I'm soaking the labels off these jam jars in there. I haven't started that. I soaked them in water today, to try and start that off. I'll probably have it ready for the next show. So I'm going to do the experiment with jam, but words are immensely powerful.
Good. Show the words on the front of the label, Lawrence.
There we go. That says love, gratitude, and thank you. And this quinoa from, another 4 months, and it'll have gone a whole year, and it still smells as sweet and fresh as the day it came in. But this one is putrid and stinks, and you can see all the scum on the side of the jar,
And what are the words?
Wow.
Show the words on that one, Lawrence.
Wow, that is crazy. That's amazing.
Hold it up again. You didn't have the camera. Hold it up one more time. Hatred, you make me sick. I will kill you.
So if words can do that, I think it's the water. I think water is something that's, very special stuff, and we've been just, as I think it's the water in things that
that reacts to the words.
Water has got feelings. We're mostly water, and water has got an intelligence. What we haven't got to grasp with how it works. Maybe water. Somebody posted a video on the Facebook page about water, saying it wasn't what we're told it is, and it's something entirely different. And maybe it is, because we are mostly water, and the earth is mostly water from what we can see. Maybe water is a form of life in itself.
Okay, well, I've just made a decision. I'm going to get some pajamas made with love words all over it, and I'm gonna sleep in those every night, and I'm not ever gonna get a day older than this right here.
Well,
I'm gonna be just like the quinoa. I'm gonna stay fresh as a daisy, and I'm gonna just stay just like this forever.
Well, yeah, I've got one T-shirt. I'll have to get some more. I'm doing a charity thing in a few weeks' time for a pet, an animal rescue place, and so I've got a guy who's going to play the guitar and on my stall, and he's going to do Beatles songs, and it's in Liverpool where the charity thing is. So there'll be a lot of Scousers there, and I'm going to be doing my fragrance quiz. So we're going to have 50 little boxes with a fragrance in. And they have to open 3 and guess them. If they get 3 right, they get a prize. And there'll be different levels if they want to go for a bigger prize. So
well,
that's you.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, I'm wrapping up now. Okay, so thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, audience. Thanks for the viewers. Thanks to the guys in the chat. Thanks you to the quinoa and the hope and love and happy words. And we'll see you next time. Please look in the description for Charlie's channel and video, and we'll hope that from here on out, people will be a little bit more aware of this attack on religion and attack on faith, them being 2 different things, and stay flat. So see you guys next time. Good night, Lawrence. Good night, Charles.
Good night, everybody.
Charlie.
Good night.